Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into the deliciously dark, often disgusting, and undeniably deadly world of medieval sieges and beyond. Imagine, if you will, being squashed against a cold, damp stone wall, the air thick with the stench of unwashed bodies, fear, and something else. Something you'd rather not identify. You hear the distant thud of a trebuchet launching its grotesque payload, perhaps a rotting carcass or worse, soaring through the sky towards your already crumbling defenses. You watch as your comrade beside you, a man who just moments ago was sharing a joke about stale bread, suddenly becomes a pincushion for an arrow, or perhaps a victim of an airborne chamber pot? Yeah, that really happened. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself there, in the heart of the medieval world, not as a valiant knight or a cunning general, but as an anonymous soul caught in the grinding gears of history. You're a peasant, perhaps, or a lowly foot soldier, drafted into a conflict you barely understand, defending a patch of land that may or may not be yours by birthright. The sun beats down on your unprotected head, or perhaps a chilling rain soaks your thin tunic, clinging to your skin like a second layer of misery. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth, stale sweat, and an underlying current of fear that gnaws at the pit of your stomach. You stand on the battlements, a vantage point that offers a panoramic, yet utterly terrifying view of the approaching storm. In the distance, you see them, a creeping tide of humanity, armed with an array of strange and terrible machines. These are not just men. They are a hungry, relentless force, driven by ambition, revenge, or simply the promise of plunder. You can almost feel the ground tremble beneath your worn boots as their heavy siege engines are slowly, methodically, dragged into position. Each creak of wood, each shouted command that carries across the field, sends a fresh wave of unease through your small band of defenders. Your mind, if it dares to wander, might drift to the comfort of your humble dwelling, the warmth of a hearth fire, or the familiar faces of your family. But those thoughts are quickly banished by the harsh reality of your present circumstances. There's no escape now. You are part of this, whether you like it or not. The decision was made for you long before you even knew what a trebuchet was, or the horrifying efficiency with which it could lob diseased animal carcasses over city walls. The first true sign of their intent isn't a roar or a charge, but a dull thud, followed by a whistling sound that grows rapidly in intensity. You instinctively duck, pressing yourself against the cold stone, as something massive hurtles overhead, crashing with sickening force somewhere within the castle courtyard. A collective gasp, then cries of alarm. It's not a rock this time. It's something soft, something putrid, that splatters against the inner wall, sending a wave of nausea through you. It's a dead animal, perhaps, or worse, a diseased human corpse, a macabre message from your besiegers. They're not just attacking your walls, they're attacking your spirit, your will to resist, by weaponizing dread and disease. This tactic, known as biological warfare, was surprisingly common in medieval sieges, though its efficacy was more about spreading panic than precision strikes. As the days turn into weeks, and the weeks threaten to stretch into months, the rhythm of the siege settles into a grim routine. You learn to sleep in snatches, your dreams haunted by the constant barrage of projectiles and the screams of the injured. Food rations dwindle, becoming smaller and more unappetizing with each passing day. You find yourself eyeing the rats that scurry across the cobblestones with a disturbing level of interest, a silent testament to the gnawing hunger in your belly. The water supply, once abundant, becomes a precious commodity, often contaminated or cut off entirely by the attackers. You learn to conserve every drop, the taste of stale, murky water becoming a luxury. The attackers, meanwhile, are not idle. They are digging. You watch them, day in and day out, their pickaxes and shovels relentlessly tearing at the earth. They're creating mines, not for precious metals, but for undermining your very foundations. You know, intellectually, that they're trying to collapse your walls, to create a breach through which they can pour. But knowing it doesn't lessen the chilling dread that accompanies the dull thud of their digging, a sound that resonates deep within your bones. The countermine efforts on your side are equally desperate, often resulting in claustrophobic, hand-to-hand combat in the dark. Narrow tunnels beneath the earth. It's a terrifying thought. Fighting in pitch black, not knowing if the next swing of your crude weapon will find an enemy or a supportive timber. You learn to recognize the different sounds of their siege engines. The rhythmic creak and groan of the trebuchet as it winds up, followed by the terrifying whoosh as it unleashes its payload. The sharp, cracking sound of the mangonel, a smaller, less powerful, but still dangerous catapult, and the constant, irritating thud of the ballista. A giant crossbow firing oversized bolts that can punch through timber and stone. These are not just machines. They are instruments of psychological warfare, designed to break your will long before they break your walls. One particularly grim morning, you witness an attack that chills you to the bone. They roll forward a massive wooden tower, taller than your own walls. This is a siege tower, a mobile fortress designed to bring their attackers directly to your level. It moves slowly, ponderously, propelled by unseen men within its belly. You watch, mesmerized and horrified, as it grinds its way across the scarred earth, a testament to their unwavering determination. Arrows rain down from its upper levels, forcing you to duck behind the merlons, the solid sections of the battlements. You hear the thud of the drawbridge at the top of the tower being lowered, a wooden tongue seeking to bridge the gap between their monstrosity and your last line of defense. The ensuing hand-to-hand combat on the battlements is a blur of desperate struggles, the clang of steel, and the guttural cries of men fighting for their lives. And then there's the fire. Oh, the fire. They don't just use flaming arrows, they employ Greek fire, a legendary incendiary weapon whose precise composition remains a subject of historical debate, but whose effects were undeniably devastating. You see it spurted from nozzles, clinging to surfaces, burning fiercely even on water. You watch in horror as it ignites timber, sending plumes of acrid smoke into the already stifling air. The screams of men caught in its embrace are sounds you will carry with you long after this nightmare is over. Historians still debate whether the true Greek fire was simply a highly volatile naphtha-based mixture or contained more exotic, unrecoverable components. But its psychological impact was undeniable, turning wood and flesh alike into smoldering embers. The smell of death becomes a constant companion. It's not just the dead bodies that lie unburied in the no-man's land between your walls and their encampment, festering under the sun or dissolving in the rain. It's the smell of disease that permeates the very air within the besieged castle. A silent killer that stalks the weak and the wounded. Dysentery, typhoid, the plague itself. These are the grim reapers that claim more lives than any sword or arrow. You see men, once strong and vibrant, reduced to shivering, feverish wrecks, their bodies wasting away before your eyes. You learn to avoid those with the telltale signs. A desperate act of self-preservation that makes you question your own humanity. One day, word spreads like wildfire through the ranks a spy has been caught. A quiet, unassuming man, known only for his skill with a needle and thread, is dragged before the commander. The accusation is whispered, then shouted he was signaling the enemy. You don't know if it's true, or if it's simply a desperate attempt to find a scapegoat for their dwindling morale. But the punishment is swift and brutal. He is hanged from the highest tower, his body left to rot as a stark warning to any who might harbor similar thoughts of betrayal. The incident, whether the man was truly guilty or not, sends a shiver of fear through the garrison. Trust becomes a luxury, suspicion a necessity. You witness other, more unconventional tactics. There's the time they manage to divert a nearby river, threatening to flood your castle's foundations, or the time they begin catapulting not just dead animals, but jars filled with live, venomous snakes over your walls. The sheer audacity, the disgusting ingenuity of it, leaves you numb. It's a vivid reminder that when survival is on the line, humanity's creativity can take truly horrifying forms. Imagine the panic, the chaos, as a jar shatters and dozens of angry, slithering serpents slither into your midst. It's a scene that would make even the bravest warrior blanch. The exhaustion is a physical weight that presses down on you, making every movement an effort. Your muscles ache. Your eyes are perpetually red-rimmed, and your mind is a fog of constant worry and grim anticipation. You find yourself hallucinating from lack of sleep, seeing shapes in the shadows, hearing whispers on the wind that aren't there. The line between reality and nightmare blurs, and you often wonder if you're truly awake or simply trapped in a perpetual state of dread. One evening, as dusk settles and the fires of the enemy camp twinkle like malevolent stars, you hear a strange sound emanating from their lines. It's a high-pitched, wailing sound, mournful and unsettling. They are playing instruments, perhaps pipes or drums, a macabre serenade designed to further break your morale. It's a subtle form of torture, a reminder of their presence, their unwavering resolve, even in the quiet hours. You try to block it out, but the sound seeps into your very being, a chilling lullaby of impending doom. The psychological warfare of medieval sieges was just as potent as the physical assaults, designed to erode the defender's will to fight. You find yourself clinging to small moments of respite, brief snatches of conversation with a fellow soldier, a shared crust of bread that tastes like cardboard but feels like a feast. These are the threads of humanity that keep you from unraveling completely, tiny anchors in a sea of despair. You learn to appreciate the brief silence between barrages, the fleeting moment of peace when the sun briefly breaks through the clouds. But these moments are fleeting, always punctuated by the return of the familiar, terrifying sounds of war. The worst part, perhaps, isn't the threat of physical harm, but the slow, agonizing erosion of hope. You see it in the eyes of your comrades, a dull, defeated look that reflects your own growing despair. The initial bravado has long since evaporated, replaced by a grim resignation. You watch as men, once full of life, simply give up, their spirits broken by the relentless pressure. You wonder if you'll be next, if your own will to survive will finally snap under the strain. Then, there's the treachery from within. Not just spies, but the very real threat of a segment of the population, perhaps the common folk, rising up against their overlords, desperate for the siege to end, no matter the cost. You hear whispers of secret tunnels, of gates left ajar, of signals exchanged under the cover of darkness. This internal strife, the fracturing of loyalty, can be as devastating as any external attack. It's a subtle but pervasive fear, knowing that the enemy might not just be at your gates, but within them. You also become acutely aware of the bizarre and often unhygienic practices of the time. The lack of sanitation, the prevalence of open wounds and festering infections, paints a vivid picture of suffering. You might witness a surgeon attempting to remove an arrow from a comrade, not with sterile instruments, but with tools that have likely been used on a dozen other injured men, without so much as a wipe down. The sheer bravery, or perhaps foolishness, of these early medical practitioners is astounding, given their limited understanding of hygiene. It's a common historical fact that more soldiers died from disease and infection than from actual combat wounds during medieval sieges. Your own chances of survival, even if you avoid direct injury, are slim indeed. As the siege wears on, the desperate measures increase. You see people attempting to escape under the cover of darkness, often with tragic results. Some are caught and summarily executed, their bodies displayed as a warning. Others simply vanish, swallowed by the darkness, their fate unknown. You wonder what drives them: a desperate hope for rescue, or simply the desire to die on their own terms, away from the suffocating confines of the besieged city. The air quality inside the walls deteriorates further. Not only is there the stench of decay and disease, but also the constant smoke from the attackers' fires, and the fires they manage to ignite within your defenses. Your lungs ache, your throat is raw, and every breath feels like an effort. You long for clean, fresh air, a luxury you haven't experienced in weeks. The feeling of grime on your skin, the constant itch of unwashed hair, becomes a minor discomfort compared to the pervasive sense of sickness that hangs in the air. You might even witness the desperate act of sallying forth, a sudden, desperate charge out of the gates by a small group of defenders, hoping to surprise the besiegers, destroy a siege engine, or simply to break the monotony of being cooped up. These are often suicide missions, undertaken by the most desperate or the most foolish. Their chances of survival slim to none. You watch them go, a knot of dread in your stomach, knowing that most of them will not return. The sounds of the battle become a constant hum in your ears, a background symphony of destruction. The clang of steel, the shouts of men, the thud of projectiles, the occasional scream of pain. It all blends into a single, overwhelming cacophony. You find yourself tuning it out, a survival mechanism to prevent your mind from shattering. But even in the quietest moments, the echoes of the battle linger, a phantom noise that never truly fades. You learn to read the signs of desperation in your commanders' faces, the tired lines around their eyes, the forced smiles, the increasingly grim pronouncements. They are under immense pressure, making impossible decisions that will determine the fate of everyone within the walls. You realize that their burden is perhaps heavier than your own, for they bear the weight of all these suffering souls. And so, you endure, day after day, through the hunger, the disease, the fear, and the relentless assault. You become a shadow of your former self, hardened by the experience, your spirit perhaps scarred forever. This isn't the glorious warfare depicted in ballads and legends. This is the brutal, grinding reality of survival, where every breath is a victory and every sunrise a miracle. You've survived the initial onslaught, the first brutal chapter of the siege, but now you find yourself deeper within the grim embrace of this historical nightmare. The memory of the dead animals splattering against the wall, the acrid stench of smoke from Greek fire. It all lingers, a constant reminder of the thin line between life and a truly awful demise. But the attackers aren't just relying on airborne horrors. They're getting personal, inching closer with every passing hour. You now witness, firsthand, the terrifying spectacle of a battering ram in action. It's not the dainty, wheeled contraption you might imagine from a child's storybook. This is a colossal tree trunk, often reinforced with an iron head, suspended from a massive frame and protected by a movable shed called a tortoise or cat. You hear the rhythmic grunt of dozens of men as they swing it back and forth, building momentum, before letting it slam into your gate or a weak point in the wall. Thump, thump, thump. Each impact reverberates through the very ground beneath your feet, a sickening vibration that travels up your legs and into your teeth. You can almost feel the stone groaning in protest, cracks appearing like spiderwebs across its ancient face. The fear isn't just about the breach, it's about the sheer, relentless force of it, the unyielding determination of those on the other side. You watch as splinters fly, as chunks of masonry crumble, and you know, deep down, that eventually, something has to give. Meanwhile, on the outer perimeter of the castle, beyond the reach of the ram, you see other forms of brutal ingenuity at play. They've begun constructing mining tunnels with renewed vigor. You remember the dull thudding from before, but now it's louder, more insistent. You learn that these tunnels aren't just for breaching the wall from below. Sometimes they're filled with combustible materials and set alight, creating controlled explosions to collapse sections of the defenses. Imagine, if you can, the terror of standing on a stone wall, feeling it tremble and rumble beneath you, knowing that at any moment the very ground could open up and swallow you whole. The counter-mining efforts on your side are equally harrowing, involving digging your own tunnels to intercept the enemies, often leading to cramped, brutal, and utterly dark underground skirmishes. It's a claustrophobic dance of death, where a single misstep or a collapsing support beam means instant burial. The psychological toll of this constant threat is immense. You find yourself listening for every subtle shift in sound, trying to discern the exact location of their digging. Every creak of the castle, every shifting stone, sends a jolt of fear through your exhausted body. You develop a kind of morbid sixth sense, anticipating the next move of your tormentors. The nights are no longer a refuge. They are simply a darker, colder version of the day, filled with the unseen dangers of the mines and the ever-present threat of a surprise assault under the cloak of darkness. As the siege drags on, the besiegers employ another chilling tactic, the treacherous parley. A white flag is raised, and a lone figure approaches your walls, ostensibly to negotiate terms of surrender. But you, hardened by weeks of suffering, instinctively distrust it. You've heard stories. Sometimes, these negotiations are simply a ruse to gather intelligence, to gauge your numbers, your morale, your weaknesses. Other times, they are used to lull you into a false sense of security, setting the stage for a sudden, unexpected assault when your guard is momentarily lowered. You remember hearing tales of commanders being invited to peace talks only to be ambushed and murdered. Historians still debate the ethics and prevalence of such deceptive tactics, but their effectiveness in medieval warfare is undeniable. It makes you question every gesture, every word, from the enemy. The lack of fresh water is becoming a dire emergency. The attackers have successfully diverted the river or poisoned the wells outside the castle. Now, your only source is a deep well within the keep. But its supply is dwindling, and the water itself is becoming increasingly brackish and unpleasant. You see people collapsing from dehydration, their lips cracked and their eyes sunken. The desperation for a single clean sip becomes an obsession, overshadowing even the fear of the enemy. You learn to savor every drop, knowing that it might be your last. Food is even scarcer. The initial stores of grain and salted meat have long since been consumed. Now, you're reduced to foraging for whatever meager scraps can be found. Rats, once a nuisance, are now a potential meal, albeit a risky one. You see people boiling leather, gnawing on roots, anything to quell the gnawing hunger that constantly twists in your gut. The weakened state of the defenders makes them even more susceptible to disease, turning a minor cut into a life-threatening infection, and a common cold into a death sentence. You find yourself eyeing your fellow, increasingly gaunt, comrades with a disturbing mix of pity and primal fear. It's a sobering thought, but you realize that if the siege goes on long enough, those around you might become options. Not something pleasant to dwell on, but a dark reality. One morning, the attackers roll out a new, grotesque implement. It's a massive catapult, even larger than the trebuchets you've grown accustomed to. But instead of rocks or diseased carcasses, it's launching something far more insidious, incendiary projectiles. Not just flaming arrows, but pots filled with pitch and tar, or baskets of burning wood. When they hit the outer buildings, they don't just burn, they explode, showering sparks and liquid fire. The screams of those caught in the inferno are horrifying. A chilling symphony of human agony. You realize they're trying to burn you out, to create an unlivable environment within the castle walls. The relentless smoke chokes your lungs, making breathing a painful chore. And the constant threat of fire means every shadow could hide a flickering ember ready to ignite your last refuge. The castle's defenses, once formidable, are showing their age. You notice new cracks in the stonework, crumbling mortar, and wooden palisades splintering under the constant barrage. Repairs are made desperately, with whatever materials can be found, scavenged timber, broken stones, even mud and straw. But it's like trying to patch a sieve with your bare hands. For every repair, another section of the wall weakens. You witness the desperate bravery of your fellow defenders, clambering onto the exposed battlements to hurl stones or pour boiling water down on the attackers, knowing they are easy targets. You've heard the stories, of course, the whispers that circulate among the weary soldiers, tales of castles that held out for years, only to fall to starvation, tales of entire garrisons succumbing to illness before a single breach was made. You remember the old proverb, "An army marches on its stomach." Well, a besieged castle dies on its stomach. This widespread historical fact, though often overlooked, underscores the brutal reality of medieval sieges, where logistical warfare often trumped direct combat. It's a grim truth that sinks deep into your bones, a constant reminder of your precarious situation. And then there's the psychological impact of being trapped. The feeling of claustrophobia, of being cut off from the outside world, begins to take its toll. The days blur into a monotonous cycle of fear and exhaustion. You start to lose track of time, of what day it is, or how long you've been confined within these crumbling walls. The sun rises and sets, but it offers no solace, only a stark reminder of another day spent in this living hell. You find yourself staring blankly at the walls, as if willing them to disappear, to open up and release you from this nightmare. The lack of sleep is relentless. Every night, you're either on watch or trying to snatch a few hours of uneasy slumber amidst the sounds of battle and the pervasive stench of decay. Your dreams are nightmares, filled with crumbling walls and charging enemies, only to awaken to the chilling reality of your situation. The constant state of alertness, the adrenaline coursing through your veins, leaves you perpetually on edge, jumpy at the slightest sound. One afternoon, a particularly gruesome sight unfolds. The attackers have managed to capture several of your comrades who ventured out on a desperate foraging mission. Instead of holding them for ransom or executing them cleanly, they display them on makeshift crosses, just beyond the range of your archers. Their agony is prolonged, a horrifying tableau designed to break your spirit. You watch, helpless, as their cries slowly fade, a chilling reminder of the enemy's utter disregard for human life. It's an act of pure terror, aimed directly at your morale. You see the desperate attempts at internal espionage, not just from the enemy, but within your own ranks. Accusations are whispered, suspicions fostered. Who is hoarding food? Who is speaking to the enemy? The paranoia is a corrosive force, eating away at the last vestiges of trust among the defenders. You find yourself looking at your comrades with a new, unsettling scrutiny, wondering if the man next to you might be planning to betray you for a handful of grain or a promise of safety. The smell inside the castle becomes almost unbearable. The dead are not always buried properly, or quickly enough, and the stench of decomposing flesh mixes with the lingering odor of human waste and illness. It's a pervasive, sickening smell that clings to your clothes, your hair, your very skin. You try to breathe through your mouth to avoid the worst of it, but it's an impossible task. You often find yourself gagging, fighting back the urge to vomit. This grim reality of medieval life, often sanitized in modern portrayals, was a constant and terrible companion during sieges. You also observe the strange superstitions that begin to take hold. Men who were once practical, grounded individuals now cling to amulets, pray to forgotten saints, or interpret omens from the flight of birds. Desperation breeds irrationality, and you see it bloom like a noxious flower in the besieged stronghold. It's a peculiar blend of fervent prayer and grim fatalism. a desperate attempt to find meaning or control in an utterly uncontrollable situation. And then there's the quiet despair of the non-combatants, the women, children, and elderly who are trapped within the walls, their fates tied to yours. You see their gaunt faces, their pleading eyes, and it adds another layer of burden to your already heavy heart. You're not just fighting for your own life, you're fighting for theirs. For the innocent souls who have no place on the battlefield. Their suffering is a silent scream that echoes through the castle, a constant reminder of the wider cost of this conflict. The very air you breathe feels heavy with unspoken questions. How much longer can this go on? Will relief ever come, or are you simply destined to become another forgotten casualty? Your bones mingling with the dust of this forgotten siege? These are the silent inquiries that plague your mind, day and night, offering no easy answers. Only a deeper descent into the harrowing reality of your existence. You're still here, still clinging to life within these beleaguered walls. But the siege has entered a new, even more desperate phase. The sounds of the battering rams still echo in your memory. A constant, sickening thud. The stench of decay and fear has become your normal. But now, the besiegers are changing tactics, pushing their macabre ingenuity to new, horrifying limits. Horrifying. You witness the construction of what looks like a massive, wooden shed being slowly pushed towards the walls. It's covered in wet hides to resist fire, and at its front, a large metal-tipped drill protrudes. This is a boring machine, designed to slowly but surely drill into the base of your stone walls. You watch, mesmerized by the sheer, painstaking effort, as men labor inside, turning massive screws or pushing huge levers, slowly grinding away at the very foundations of your existence. Each creak of the mechanism, each shower of stone dust, feels like a piece of your hope chipping away. It's a slow, agonizing process, but the psychological effect is immense. The feeling of being relentlessly, inevitably undermined. Meanwhile, the projectile bombardment hasn't ceased. It's merely evolved. You've seen rocks, diseased carcasses, and even jars of snakes. Now, however, the enemy is employing a truly vile form of psychological warfare: human heads. Yes, you heard that right. The heads of captured enemies, or perhaps even their own dead, are launched over the walls, often landing with a sickening thud, their lifeless eyes staring blankly into the besieged chaos. It's a horrifying spectacle designed to break morale, to remind you of the brutal fate that awaits you should your defenses fail. The sheer barbarity of it makes your stomach churn, a grim reminder of the thin veneer of civilization that is completely stripped away in this desperate conflict. This particular gruesome tactic, while not a daily occurrence, was indeed documented in various medieval sieges as an extreme form of terror. The conditions within the castle are deteriorating rapidly. The internal wells are almost dry, yielding only muddy, foul-smelling water that must be boiled, if you even have the fuel to do so. The lack of clean water has led to an explosion of disease. Dysentery is rampant, turning your comrades into shivering, wasting shells of their former selves. The latrines, already primitive, overflow, creating a putrid cesspool that attracts flies and spreads illness even faster. You find yourself constantly scratching at insect bites, knowing that each one could carry a deadly disease. The smell is so overwhelming that you often find yourself breathing shallowly, desperate to avoid inhaling the pervasive stench of sickness and decay. Food is no longer just scarce. It's non-existent. You see desperate individuals trying to catch birds with improvised nets, or searching for roots and grubs in the barren courtyard. The grim reality of cannibalism, while rarely explicitly documented as widespread, was a whispered horror in times of extreme starvation during prolonged sieges. You might hear hushed rumors, see a suspicious absence, or simply note the desperate, haunted look in people's eyes that suggests they've crossed a line no human should ever cross. It's a chilling thought, a testament to the absolute depths of despair to which people can be driven. The siege is also taking its toll on the very structure of society within the walls. Discipline is breaking down. Soldiers are no longer as quick to obey commands, resentment simmering just beneath the surface. Small acts of insubordination turn into open defiance. You see petty squabbles escalate into violent brawls over a morsel of food or a few drops of water. The cohesion that once held your group together is fracturing, replaced by a desperate, every man for himself mentality. This breakdown of order, and the internal conflicts it spawned, often hastened the fall of besieged strongholds. You also become acutely aware of the inventive, often cruel, ways besiegers would try to flush out defenders from their hidden positions or underground tunnels. One method involved pumping smoke from burning sulfur or other noxious materials into confined spaces, forcing defenders out into the open or suffocating them. Imagine the terror of being trapped in a dark, claustrophobic tunnel, suddenly enveloped by choking fumes, your lungs burning, your eyes watering, desperately scrambling for an exit that might not even be there. It's a truly awful way to die, a slow, agonizing asphyxiation or a desperate dash into enemy lines. The attacks on the gates are becoming more ferocious. They're not just using battering rams, they're employing fire directly against the wooden gates, soaking them in pitch and igniting them. You see the flames licking hungrily at the timber, sending plumes of black smoke into the sky. Your comrades are pouring water, sand, even human waste onto the burning wood, anything to douse the inferno. The heat is intense, even from a distance, and the danger of the gate collapsing is imminent. The gate, once a symbol of security, now feels like a flimsy barrier just waiting to be breached. You remember an old tale, a common historical fact, about the desperation of besieged populations. It speaks of instances where cities, driven to the brink of starvation, would resort to eating horses, dogs, cats, even rats, anything that moved. You've now seen it firsthand, the horrifying descent into primal survival. It's a sobering thought, understanding that such extreme measures were not just mythical stories, but grim realities for countless people throughout history. The current state of your castle is a living embodiment of that desperate truth. The attackers, emboldened by your dwindling resources and weakening defenses, are becoming more daring. They're constructing scaling ladders and attempting to rush the walls under the cover of darkness or a concentrated barrage. You spend your nights on constant alert, straining your eyes against the inky blackness, listening for the telltale scrape of a ladder against stone. The hand-to-hand combat on the battlements is brutal, a chaotic melee of thrusting spears, swinging axes, and desperate cries. You fight with the ferocity of a cornered animal, knowing that retreat means certain death. There are whispers, too, of desperation from the other side. You hear occasional shouts, a rare instance of a captured enemy soldier, weakened and starved, being brought in. You realize that while they have the advantage, the siege is taking its toll on them too, albeit less severely. They might be running low on supplies, or their men might be growing restless from the prolonged campaign. This flicker of shared misery, however small, offers a tiny, almost imperceptible spark of hope. A thought that maybe, just maybe, they too are nearing their breaking point. Historians still debate whether extended sieges ultimately favored the attackers or the defenders. As both sides faced immense logistical and human costs, it's a complicated equation of endurance and attrition. You also become aware of the sheer ingenuity, however crude, of the defensive measures taken. From boiling oil and water poured over the walls, to sharpened stakes buried in the ground outside the gates, to the use of heavy stones dropped from murder holes onto attackers below. Each defender, from the most skilled archer to the lowest peasant, becomes an engineer of death in their own right, improvising with whatever is at hand to repel the enemy. It's a testament to the human will to survive, even in the face of overwhelming odds. You might even recall a specific detail: some defenders would throw beehives over the walls, unleashing a swarm of angry, stinging insects onto the unsuspecting attackers below. Not fatal, perhaps, but certainly a memorable deterrent. The mental strain is almost unbearable. You find yourself talking to yourself, muttering incoherently, trying to make sense of the endless suffering. The faces of your loved ones, once so clear, begin to fade, replaced by the grim visages of your dying comrades. You sometimes wonder if you are losing your mind, if the relentless pressure has finally broken your sanity. The line between reality and hallucination becomes increasingly blurred, and you often find yourself questioning what is real and what is a figment of your starved and exhausted imagination. The days are marked not by the sun, but by the next wave of attack, the next desperate defense. Time loses its meaning. You are simply existing, surviving moment by moment, breath by agonizing breath. The concept of a future, of life beyond these walls, becomes an abstract, impossible dream. Your world has shrunk to the confines of this besieged stronghold, a miniature universe of suffering and despair. One particularly horrifying morning, you awaken to a new stench, even fouler than the usual decay. You discover that the besiegers have begun to catapult their own waste over the walls. Yes, human excrement. It splatters against the inner courtyards, coating everything in a vile, disease-ridden slime. The aim is not just to spread sickness, but to utterly demoralize you, to make your living conditions so utterly repugnant that you simply give up. It's a final, disgusting insult, a truly awful way to attempt to break the last vestiges of your human dignity. You try to avoid it, but it's everywhere. A constant sickening reminder of their depravity and your own desperate situation. The air is thick with flies, drawn by the rampant decay and filth. They buzz constantly, landing on your skin, on your meager food, a persistent torment that you are too weak to fight off. You are covered in them, a living testament to the unsanitary conditions. The sound of their incessant buzzing becomes another layer in the symphony of suffering, an irritating, maddening drone that follows you everywhere. Even the silence, when it comes, is terrifying. It's not the peace of a resting world, but the heavy, unnatural stillness that precedes a storm. You find yourself tensing, bracing for the next terrifying sound, the next sign of attack. The absence of noise is more unsettling than the loudest bombardment. A chilling void that hints at an even greater, unspoken horror to come. Horror, too. Your body is a testament to the ordeal. You are emaciated, your ribs prominent, your skin stretched tightly over your bones. Your movements are slow, deliberate. Each step an effort. You are constantly shivering, even when the sun shines. Your body unable to regulate its temperature. Your senses are dulled, except for your hearing, which is preternaturally sharp, always listening for the sounds of approaching doom. As the days turn into weeks, and the weeks threaten to stretch into months, you find yourself questioning what you are fighting for. The initial ideals, the noble cause, have long since been forgotten, replaced by the simple, animalistic drive to survive one more hour, one more day. The glory of warfare is a distant, mocking echo. All that remains is the brutal, unforgiving reality of its consequences. You are deep now, so very deep, into the agonizing reality of this siege. The stench of decay, the gnawing hunger, the constant hum of dread. These aren't just details. They are the very fabric of your existence. You've witnessed the battering ram's tireless assault, felt the ground tremble from a hidden mine, and had your stomach turn at the sight of airborne human heads. But the enemy, relentless in their cruelty, has more horrors yet to unleash. Now, you begin to see them erecting structures that look like crude, elevated platforms, sometimes even resembling makeshift towers, just out of range of your archers. From these vantage points, they begin launching fire arrows and incendiary pots with terrifying precision. You watch as they arc through the air, landing not just on the outer walls, but within the castle grounds themselves, targeting timber structures, thatched roofs, and anything else that will burn. The constant threat of fire is maddening. You and your comrades are now engaged in a desperate, endless battle against the flames, forming human chains to pass buckets of precious, foul-smelling water, or to throw sand onto the hungry embers. The smoke chokes you, burning your eyes and lungs. And the heat from the fires adds another layer of oppressive misery to the already stifling atmosphere within the walls. You realize their goal isn't just to breach the walls, but to make the castle utterly uninhabitable, to literally burn you out, adding to the inferno. You notice a new kind of projectile. These aren't just burning pots. They are hollowed-out gourds or ceramic vessels filled with a mixture of lime and sulfur, sometimes even quicklime. When these hit a surface and shatter, they create a blinding, caustic cloud that irritates the eyes, throat, and skin. Imagine the chaos: men stumbling, gagging, momentarily blinded, making them easy targets for arrows or other projectiles. It's not necessarily fatal on its own, but it's a crippling, disorienting weapon, designed to sow panic and create openings for a direct assault. You quickly learn to shield your face, to turn away, anything to avoid the burning, choking cloud. The internal struggles are becoming more pronounced. You witness a group of hungry, desperate peasants attempting to break through the gate themselves, hoping to negotiate terms with the besiegers, or simply to escape the slow death within. They are quickly subdued by the remaining soldiers, sometimes brutally, but the incident leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. It highlights the growing chasm between the starving populace and the increasingly desperate military command. This division, a common historical truth, often proved to be the Achilles heel of besieged cities, as internal dissent could be as destructive as any external force. The water situation has reached critical levels. The last of the brackish well water is gone. You are now reduced to drinking whatever rainwater can be collected, or, in the most dire circumstances, urine, filtered crudely through cloth. The dehydration is palpable, manifesting as headaches, dizziness, and extreme fatigue. Your tongue feels swollen, and your throat is constantly parched. You watch as weaker individuals succumb, their bodies simply giving up, unable to sustain themselves without basic hydration. The thought of water, clean, cool water, becomes a recurring, tormenting fantasy. You hear the dull, persistent clang of metal on metal from below ground. They are not just mining. They are now attempting to tunnel under the castle's main well. Their aim is clear: to completely cut off your last, albeit dwindling, source of water, or perhaps to contaminate it with their own waste. Your own counterminers are working feverishly, their faces grim, knowing that if they fail, the castle's fate is sealed. The cramped, dark conditions of underground combat are terrifying enough. But the knowledge that your very survival depends on their success adds a suffocating layer of pressure. Historians still debate the effectiveness of such deep tunneling efforts, as they were incredibly labor-intensive and prone to collapse. But the threat was always potent. The psychological warfare continues, intensifying with each passing day. The enemy has begun to erect makeshift gallows within sight of your walls, and they hang effigies of your leaders, or sometimes even real prisoners, in plain view. They shout taunts across the fields, promising torture and slaughter if you don't surrender. They parade the captured banners of your fallen allies, or even the remnants of their clothing, anything to sow despair and break your will. You try to block it out, to focus on the immediate task at hand, but the images and the shouts seep into your consciousness, poisoning your thoughts. You notice the cunning ways the besiegers exploit the terrain. They might divert small streams to create muddy, impassable moats, or build earthen ramps to make it easier for their siege engines to reach your walls. Every natural feature is turned into a weapon against you. You are acutely aware of being constantly outmaneuvered, of fighting a battle not just against men, but against the very landscape itself. manipulated by your determined foe. One particularly gruesome sight involves the use of diseased animals. You've seen carcasses lobbed over, but now, they're not just dead. They're live diseased animals. Rats, pigs, sometimes even human prisoners already succumbing to plague, launched over the walls. The intent is clear: to spread pestilence among the already weakened defenders, to turn the castle into a charnel house. The sight of a writhing, diseased pig landing in the courtyard, or a plague-ridden human corpse being unceremoniously dumped, sends shivers of primal fear through you. It's a truly awful, horrific form of biological attack. A desperate gamble by the attackers to hasten your demise. You remember the unsettling fact that the Black Death itself was likely spread, in part, by the use of diseased corpses as projectiles during sieges, notably at the Siege of Kaffa. The air inside the castle is now thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, human waste, and disease. There are no fresh clothes, no clean water for washing, your skin crawls with filth, and you are constantly aware of the grime that coats every surface. The flies are a constant torment, buzzing around every open wound, every piece of discarded food. You can practically feel the bacteria multiplying around you, an unseen enemy as deadly as any soldier. The sound of the enemy's musicians, once an unsettling serenade, has become a maddening drone. They play their pipes and drums for hours on end, a relentless, monotonous beat designed to prevent you from sleeping, to wear down your sanity. Even when you manage to find a moment of rest, the phantom rhythm continues in your head, a tormenting echo that offers no escape. You find yourself growing increasingly paranoid, constantly looking over your shoulder. Trust is a luxury no one can afford. You see men whispering in corners, their eyes darting around. And you wonder what they're plotting. Are they discussing surrender? Are they planning an escape? Or are they simply sharing a moment of desperate camaraderie? The ambiguity is agonizing, adding another layer of psychological torment to your already shattered existence. The dreams, when they come, are not a refuge, but a continuation of the nightmare. You dream of food, of water, of wide-open spaces, only to awaken to the grim reality of starvation, thirst, and confinement. The contrast is jarring, making the waking hours even more unbearable. You find yourself longing for dreamless sleep, for oblivion, anything to escape the constant torment of your conscious mind. You witness moments of utter, desperate cruelty from your own side. A soldier caught stealing a meager ration is summarily beaten, perhaps even executed. As a harsh warning to others, justice is swift and brutal, born out of the absolute necessity to maintain some semblance of order in a world gone mad. You avert your eyes, but the images burn themselves into your memory, a testament to the savagery that total war can unleash upon even the most civilized of people. The constant tension has frayed everyone's nerves. Arguments erupt over the smallest things, a misplaced bucket, a shared glance. These skirmishes, though minor compared to the battle outside, are emotionally draining, further eroding the bonds of camaraderie. You recognize that the enemy is not just fighting your physical strength, but your mental and emotional resilience, and they are slowly, relentlessly winning. You reflect on the vastness of history and how many forgotten souls like yourself have endured such unimaginable suffering. This siege, though a specific event in time, feels timeless, a universal testament to human endurance and human cruelty. It is a widely accepted academic perspective that the psychological impact of prolonged sieges was often as decisive as the physical damage inflicted, leading to surrenders born of despair rather than outright defeat. This knowledge offers little comfort, but it does place your own suffering into a broader, albeit grim, historical context. And then, a new horror begins to emerge from the enemy lines. You see them gathering what appears to be pitch and sulfur, heating it in large cauldrons. The smell of burning tar and a pungent, acrid odor drifts across the field. They are preparing flaming barrels or fire pots, large containers filled with combustibles, often designed to explode or to spread their fiery contents over a wider area. When these are launched, they don't just create a localized fire, they create a wave of liquid flame, consuming everything in their path. The sight is terrifying. A truly apocalyptic vision of destruction. You brace yourself, knowing that the next phase of their assault will be one of pure, unadulterated fire. You are a ghost of your former self, a silent witness to the relentless march of human depravity and resilience. The reek of human waste and suffering has become a part of you, clinging to your skin and clothes. The screams of burning men and the sickening thud of the battering ram are etched into your very soul. But the siege, ever evolving in its cruelty, now brings forth new, ingenious methods of destruction, designed to exploit your utter desperation. You notice them constructing peculiar, high-arched structures, almost like enormous slingshots, but much larger than any trebuchet. These are not for flinging rocks. They are for launching corpses over the walls with even greater frequency and precision. Not just diseased animals anymore, but the bodies of fallen soldiers from both sides, bloated and festering, their limbs often grotesquely contorted. They land with a sickening splat, often exploding upon impact, spraying noxious fluids and fragments of bone across the courtyard. The intent is clear: to not only spread disease and despair, but to literally bury you under the weight of your own dead, and theirs. The sight is an ultimate violation, turning death itself into a weapon, a truly awful way to be confronted with the Grim Reaper. Compounding this horror, you also see them constructing what appears to be crude, but terrifyingly effective. Portable shelters designed to protect men who are digging right at the base of your walls. These sows or cats are heavily armored with timber and wet hides, allowing sappers to work almost directly beneath your battlements, undermining the foundations with greater speed and impunity. You can hear their picks and shovels even more clearly now, a maddening, incessant scraping that signals your impending doom. It's a claustrophobic thought, men relentlessly digging below you, unseen, unheard until it's too late. The sheer, grinding persistence of this method is terrifying, a slow, inevitable march towards collapse. The internal breakdown within your besieged stronghold is accelerating. Discipline has all but evaporated. Soldiers openly defy orders, prioritize their own survival, and hoard what little food or water they can find. You witness instances of theft and violence, not just between the common folk, but among the fighting men themselves. The bonds of camaraderie have frayed, replaced by suspicion and a primal fear for individual survival. This internal chaos, where the lines of authority blur and collapse, is often a prelude to total defeat. Historians still debate the exact tipping point for morale collapse in prolonged sieges, but the loss of internal cohesion is universally cited as a major factor. The lack of sleep is now a form of torture. You are constantly on edge, your mind a foggy mess of exhaustion and paranoia. The nights are filled with the sounds of the enemy, their digging, their taunts, their occasional, jarring attacks, and the days offer no true respite. You might find yourself drifting off while on watch, only to be snapped awake by a sudden noise, your heart pounding. The perpetual fatigue makes rational thought difficult, blurring the lines between reality and the feverish nightmares that haunt your brief moments of unconsciousness. Water has become the single most valuable commodity. You see men trading their last pieces of armor, even their weapons, for a few sips of muddy water. The desperation is etched onto every face, their lips cracked, their eyes sunken. People are collapsing with alarming regularity, their bodies simply giving up. You, too, feel the constant, gnawing thirst, a dry, rasping sensation in your throat that no amount of swallowing can alleviate. You understand, with chilling clarity, that thirst might be your ultimate undoing. A silent killer far more insidious than any enemy blade. In a truly awful display of psychological warfare, the besiegers have begun to employ carrion bells. These are large bells, sometimes salvaged from churches, that they hang just outside your walls, ringing them incessantly, day and night. The sound is not loud enough to deafen, but it's a monotonous, maddening clang that drills into your skull, designed to prevent any sleep, any peace, any moment of respite. It's a relentless auditory torment, reminding you of their presence, their unwavering resolve, and your own inescapable predicament. Imagine the sheer mind-numbing repetition, designed to drive you to the brink of insanity. You observe the cunning of the attackers in their use of diversionary tactics. While a main assault might be launched at one gate, a smaller, more subtle attack is simultaneously mounted at another, or a feint is made with a group of ladder-carrying soldiers. This forces your already depleted garrison to spread itself even thinner. Reacting to multiple threats, never knowing where the true danger lies, it's a constant game of cat and mouse, and you, the mouse, are increasingly exhausted and outnumbered. The air inside the castle is now choked with the pervasive stench of death, sickness, and human desperation. There are bodies that cannot be moved, latrines overflowing, and the general filth of a population trapped in an increasingly unsanitary environment. The very air you breathe feels heavy and putrid. You try to avoid thinking about it, to numb your senses, but the smell is a constant, inescapable companion, a grim reminder of your rapidly deteriorating circumstances. And then, a new kind of terror. They begin to launch not just rocks, but large, burning bales of hay or straw soaked in pitch. These aren't designed to smash walls. They're designed to land inside the castle, igniting everything they touch, spreading fire uncontrollably. The sight of these fiery projectiles hurtling over the battlements, scattering embers and flames, fills you with a primal fear. You become part of the desperate human chain, passing buckets, trying to douse the flames before they consume your last remaining shelters. It's a battle against an invisible enemy, a race against time, as the castle slowly but surely turns into a fiery inferno. You notice the quiet desperation in the eyes of the women and children. They huddle together, their faces gaunt, their eyes wide with fear. Their cries are rare now, replaced by a silent, bone-deep terror. You see mothers trying to comfort their emaciated children, offering them tiny, pitiful scraps of whatever they can find. Their suffering is a constant, gnawing pain in your heart, reminding you of the innocent lives at stake, of the grim future that awaits them if the walls fall. There's a chilling historical detail you recall, a little-known fact about desperate measures during sieges. Sometimes, if the besiegers were short on traditional projectiles, they would resort to launching beehives over the walls, releasing swarms of angry, disoriented bees onto the defenders. While not fatal, the ensuing chaos, the painful stings, and the sheer discombobulation would create a temporary advantage for the attackers, allowing them to press closer to the walls. It's a testament to the brutal creativity born out of necessity. You grimace at the thought of 1,000 tiny, angry stings amidst the chaos of battle. The psychological toll is manifesting in strange ways. You see men talking to themselves, their eyes unfocused, muttering prayers or curses. Others become completely withdrawn, sitting silently, staring into space, their minds seemingly broken by the ordeal. You try to cling to your own sanity, to focus on the small, immediate tasks, to avoid letting your mind wander into the abyss of despair. But the edges of your own reality feel increasingly frayed, stretched thin by the relentless pressure. You might even witness an act of self-mutilation, a soldier, driven mad by hunger or thirst, attempting to end their own suffering, or perhaps injuring themselves deliberately to be removed from the battlements. These are desperate acts born of utter hopelessness, chilling testaments to the breaking point of the human spirit. You quickly avert your gaze, but the image lingers, a stark reminder of the fragile line between survival and oblivion. The constant sound of the enemy's siege engines, their battering rams, and the shouts of their soldiers has become a maddening backdrop to your existence. It's a relentless, pounding rhythm that vibrates through your skull, making it impossible to think, impossible to find peace. Even when there's a lull in the fighting, the phantom sounds continue, a tormenting echo in your exhausted mind. You find yourself bargaining with fate, making silent promises, pleading for a swift end, one way or another. The idea of continued suffering, of this slow, agonizing decay, is almost worse than the thought of death itself. You crave an end, a resolution, anything to break the monotonous cycle of fear and despair. The ultimate question that haunts you, and that scholars still debate, is whether the brutal, protracted nature of medieval sieges was primarily a test of military might or, more fundamentally, a test of human endurance and logistics. You, experiencing it firsthand, know it to be both, but with a heavy emphasis on the latter. The siege is not just a battle, it is a war of attrition waged on every level, from the grand strategic to the most intimate and horrifying personal level, and you are living proof of its awful cost. You are merely a collection of raw nerves and aching bones now, a vessel for the unending torment of this siege. The stench, the hunger, the fire, the constant fear of collapsing walls or disease-ridden projectiles, it has become your grim reality. You've seen the depths of human cruelty and the incredible, horrifying ingenuity born of desperation. But even now, the besiegers conjure new nightmares, twisting common elements of medieval life into instruments of agonizing demise. You begin to notice strange, dark shapes moving in the shadowed parts of the enemy camp during the darkest hours. These are covert infiltration attempts. Small, highly skilled groups of soldiers attempting to scale walls silently, or to slip through unguarded posterns and sewers. Their aim isn't a full assault, but to open a gate from within, to sow chaos, or to assassinate key figures. You find yourself spending sleepless nights staring into the inky blackness, straining your eyes and ears for any subtle movement, any unnatural sound that might betray their presence. The paranoia is a gnawing beast, making you distrust every shadow, every creak of the ancient timbers. And then, you hear the muffled thuds from below, distinct from the digging of the mines. They are trying a new, truly awful tactic, undermining with fire. They've dug tunnels beneath your walls and supports, not to collapse them with picks, but to fill them with wood and other combustibles, then set them alight. The heat weakens the stone, cracks the foundations, and causes the earth above to settle, creating dangerous fissures. Imagine the terror of feeling the ground beneath you grow warm, then hot, sensing the very earth burning from within. It's a slow, terrifying process, the threat of being swallowed by the ground or roasted alive as the ultimate demise. The disease within the castle has reached epidemic proportions, without proper sanitation, clean water, or medicine. Even a simple cut can become a festering, life-threatening infection. Dysentery continues to ravage the population, and you see new, more terrifying symptoms appearing: swollen glands, dark boils, and coughing fits that indicate the terrifying presence of the plague. The dead are piled in increasingly large heaps, their bodies rapidly decaying, further spreading the contagion. You find yourself instinctively holding your breath when passing these gruesome mounds, your mind numb with horror. It's a common historical truth that disease often claimed more lives in besieged fortresses than combat itself. The psychological warfare takes on a new, insidious form. The besiegers begin to capture any animals that manage to stray from the castle walls: dogs, cats, even birds, and, after torturing them, they catapult their carcasses back into the stronghold. It's not about spreading disease, it's about a deliberate act of cruelty, a message that nothing you hold dear is safe, and that your own animalistic suffering will soon mirror theirs. You avert your eyes, but the images of the broken, mangled animals are etched into your memory, a testament to the utter depravity of the conflict. Your body is a testament to the extreme privation. Your skin is sallow, your eyes sunken, and every movement requires immense effort. You've lost a drastic amount of weight, and your muscles ache constantly from the ceaseless vigil and the lack of proper nourishment. You are a walking skeleton, fueled by sheer, desperate will. The concept of feeling full, or truly rested, is a distant, almost alien memory. The remaining water, if you can even call it that, is murky and tastes of earth and decay. You sip it grudgingly, knowing it might bring more sickness than relief. But the thirst is an unbearable agony. You see the desperate measures people take, trying to filter it through layers of cloth, boiling it over dwindling fires, anything to make it slightly less lethal. Your dreams are haunted by images of clear, flowing streams and cool, fresh spring water, only to awaken to the parched reality of your throat. You're also witness to moments of utterly desperate ingenuity from your own side. You see archers fashioning arrows with rags soaked in pitch, hoping to ignite the enemy's siege engines or their encampment. You observe small groups of daring soldiers attempting desperate, high-risk sorties, trying to spike a cannon or burn a siege tower, knowing full well that they may not return. This raw, primal will to survive, even against impossible odds, is a strange source of both dread and a flicker of admiration. Historians still debate the true effectiveness of these small, desperate counterattacks, often weighing their symbolic value against their actual military impact. The constant, relentless noise is drilling into your skull, the thud of the battering ram, the distant shouts, the clang of weapons, the maddening hum of flies, the groans of the sick and dying. It all blends into a single, overwhelming cacophony that offers no respite. Even in moments of relative quiet, the phantom echoes continue, a tormenting symphony of war that leaves you perpetually on edge. You might stumble upon a small, isolated group of civilians, perhaps a family, attempting to dig their own crude tunnel under the walls, a desperate bid for freedom. They work in secret, their faces etched with a mix of fear and fragile hope. You know, with a grim certainty, that their chances of success are slim, and that discovery means certain death. But you also understand the raw, primal urge that drives them. It's a moment that highlights the stark choice between a slow, agonizing death within or a quick, terrifying one without. The psychological breakdown is evident in the faces around you. Men who once held their heads high now shuffle with a defeated posture, their eyes vacant and hopeless. The laughter has long since vanished, replaced by a grim silence, broken only by whispers of despair or the occasional, desperate prayer. The will to fight is ebbing, replaced by a longing for the end, whatever form it may take. You witness a new, chilling tactic from the besiegers. They begin to construct large, crude ovens or kilns just outside your walls. From these, a thick, noxious smoke begins to billow, carried by the wind directly into the castle. It's not just wood smoke, it's mixed with something else, something acrid and irritating that burns your throat and eyes, making breathing excruciating. They are attempting to smoke you out, literally, to make the air within the walls unbreathable, forcing you to surrender or succumb to asphyxiation. It's a slow, agonizing form of torture, turning the very air you breathe into a weapon. This lesser-known historical detail underscores the extent to which medieval besiegers would go to break a garrison's will. The despair within your own ranks leads to desperate, irrational acts. You see men attempting to jump from the walls, hoping to break free or end their torment quickly. Others try to surrender individually, waving scraps of cloth, only to be cut down by their own side or ignored by the enemy. The desperation makes men do unthinkable things, blurring the lines of loyalty and reason. The very concept of a good death has long since vanished. There is no glory here, no heroic charge, only a slow, agonizing decay, a prolonged agony of hunger, thirst, disease, and the constant threat of a brutal, unceremonious end. You realize that your death, if it comes, will be just another statistic, another nameless casualty in a forgotten siege. You exist now as a raw nerve, a mere echo of the person you once were, the relentless thrum of the siege, the pervasive stench of death, the gnawing hunger that has long since surpassed mere discomfort to become a constant. Burning agony. These are the only truths you know. You've endured the most gruesome projectiles, the creeping dread of unseen tunnels, and the slow, agonizing burn of fire from within and without. But the besiegers, with a chilling inventiveness, still have ways to inflict suffering that twist the very definition of warfare. You now witness them constructing massive wooden platforms, sometimes even floating pontoons if there's a moat, covered in wet hides and pushed right up against your walls. But these aren't just for scaling. From these platforms, you see them extending what look like enormous, clawed poles, designed to literally tear down sections of your wall stone by stone, or to pull away the timber supports. These are crude, yet terrifyingly effective. Wall-demolishing hooks or grappling rams. You hear the sickening crunch as they rip away masonry, the groaning protest of the ancient stone. And you know that each piece they remove brings the inevitable breach closer. It's a slow, methodical dismemberment of your last refuge, a truly awful way to watch your defenses crumble before your eyes. Adding to this, the enemy begins to deploy what appears to be giant slingshots or catapults designed to hurl beehives, not just over the walls, but into specific, crowded areas. You hear the shattering of the hives and then the high-pitched, angry buzz as swarms of disoriented, furious bees descend upon the already suffering populace. While not immediately fatal, the ensuing panic, the painful stings, and the sheer, maddening chaos they create are a potent psychological weapon, designed to break morale and create openings for other attacks. Imagine the terror of fighting for your life, only to be simultaneously attacked by 1,000 tiny, stinging furies. This less common, yet documented tactic highlights the bizarre ingenuity of medieval warfare. The water situation has devolved into absolute catastrophe. The wells are entirely dry, and any rainwater collection is negligible. People are now resorting to drinking their own blood, or that of animals, or desperately trying to filter urine through their tattered clothes. A truly awful sight born of unimaginable thirst. Your mouth is a sandpaper desert, your throat raw and burning. You see the gaunt faces of children, their eyes glazed with dehydration, and your heart clenches with a pain sharper than any physical wound. The agony of thirst, prolonged and unyielding, is a silent killer, claiming victims just as effectively as any blade. The stench inside this castle is now indescribable, a thick, putrid miasma of death, disease, and human waste. The air is so heavy with it that it feels physically oppressive, making every breath a struggle. Flies, large and bloated, swarm everywhere, landing on open wounds, on the faces of the dying, spreading contagion with every buzzing movement. You are constantly swatting at them, a futile gesture against an overwhelming tide of buzzing tormentors. This pervasive filth, a stark historical fact of besieged populations, was as much a killer as the enemy's weapons. The constant, grating sound of the enemy's digging, combined with the occasional, chilling crack of collapsing masonry from their undermining efforts, is a psychological torture. You feel the ground vibrate beneath you, a constant, unsettling tremor that hints at the fragility of your remaining defenses. You find yourself obsessively listening for any change in the rhythm, any sudden silence that might signify a breakthrough. The knowledge that unseen enemies are slowly, methodically, tearing away at your foundations from below is a constant, gnawing dread. The enemy also employs a particularly insidious form of psychological warfare, singing and chanting. At night, their camp is filled with mournful dirges, or sometimes triumphant war songs, deliberately crafted to be just audible within your walls. It's a constant reminder of their presence, their unity, and your own isolation and despair. The sound seeps into your very being, a chilling lullaby that steals your sleep and poisons your dreams, leaving you perpetually exhausted and on edge. You witness instances of fratricide, soldiers turning on each other in fits of hunger-induced madness or despair. A dispute over a scrap of food, a perceived insult, can escalate into a sudden, brutal act of violence. The bonds of discipline and camaraderie have shattered, replaced by a desperate, every man for himself mentality. It's a horrifying spectacle, watching the last vestiges of humanity crumble under the immense pressure of the siege. The despair among the non-combatants is palpable. You see women attempting to reason with the guards, begging for release, offering anything for a chance to escape the slow death within. Children wander aimlessly, their eyes vacant, their bodies emaciated. Their quiet suffering, their silent pleas, are a constant, agonizing burden on your soul, a reminder of the innocent lives trapped in this living hell. A new, truly awful weapon is deployed large, hollowed-out timbers filled with explosive materials, a mixture of gunpowder if they have it, pitch, and sulfur, rolled up to the gates or dropped into breaches. When ignited, these makeshift bombs don't just burn, they detonate with immense force, sending splinters of wood and stone, and gouts of flame, in all directions. The concussive blast can throw men off their feet, disorient them, and the subsequent fire completes the carnage. It's a terrifying, chaotic, and truly devastating method of attack. A sudden, explosive end to life. You notice how the constant fear and lack of sleep are manifesting in strange, almost supernatural beliefs. Soldiers who once scoffed at superstitions now whisper about omens, about curses, about vengeful spirits haunting the battlements. They see faces in the smoke, hear voices on the wind. The line between reality and hallucination is so thin it's almost transparent, and you wonder if your own mind is beginning to unravel. The desperation of your commanders becomes evident in their increasingly reckless orders. They launch suicidal sorties, sending small groups of men out to attack overwhelming forces, hoping for a miracle. They hoard the last remnants of food for themselves or for a select few, leading to open resentment and further breakdown of morale. You realize that their will, too, is breaking, their strategies devolving into acts of blind, desperate gambling. The very air itself feels heavy with the weight of unfulfilled promises and the silence of abandoned hopes. The concept of relief, of a rescue army, has faded into a cruel joke. You are alone, isolated, left to face your inevitable fate. This profound sense of abandonment is perhaps the most insidious psychological weapon of all. You are no longer just a participant in this medieval nightmare. You are a living monument to its horrors. Every raw nerve ending, every aching bone screaming the story of the siege. The stench, the thirst, the relentless threat of fire and crumbling walls, these have become more than just external realities. They are woven into the very fabric of your being. You've witnessed unspeakable cruelties, the agonizing ingenuity of your tormentors, and the slow, inevitable erosion of hope. But as the siege wears on, the attackers, in their grim determination, unveil even more insidious ways to ensure your demise. You begin to observe them constructing peculiar, elongated wooden structures, often on wheels, that are slowly pushed toward the walls under cover of night. These aren't siege towers or rams, but specialized mantlets or galleries that provide cover for men who are not just digging, but actively undermining sections of the wall with fire and picks while being protected. They bring large quantities of wood and other flammable materials directly to the base of your defenses, igniting them to create intense, localized heat. You can feel the stone becoming hot to the touch, hear it cracking and groaning under the immense thermal stress. The fear is palpable. The wall isn't just being struck, it's being cooked from beneath, slowly disintegrating. This deliberate burning of supporting timbers and masonry from an unseen vantage point is a truly awful and terrifying way to watch your last sanctuary collapse. As if the direct physical threats weren't enough, the besiegers escalate their psychological warfare in a truly grotesque manner. They begin to launch not just diseased carcasses, but dead bodies of their own men who died from plague or other virulent diseases, wrapped in cloth, over your walls. The intention isn't just to spread infection, but to unleash a torrent of profound fear and disgust. The sight of these plague-ridden corpses, bursting upon impact and scattering their putrid contents, is enough to break even the strongest will. You instinctively recoil, but the chilling realization that their own dead are being weaponized against you, a testament to their fanaticism, is a blow to the spirit more devastating than any rock. This specific tactic, though abhorrent, is a known historical detail, famously employed during the Siege of Kaffa by the Golden Horde, leading to a possible early instance of biological warfare. The living conditions inside are beyond desperate. The water supply is utterly exhausted, and any attempt to collect rainwater is futile given the constant bombardment or lack of suitable containers. People are collapsing from severe dehydration and electrolyte imbalance, their bodies failing in agonizing ways. You witness moments of sheer madness, individuals drinking the blood of fallen comrades, or desperately trying to lick moisture from damp stones. The thirst is a torment that consumes your every thought, making it impossible to focus on anything else. Your tongue feels like sandpaper, and your throat is raw and burning, a constant reminder of the slow, agonizing death that thirst promises. The pervasive stench of death and decay has intensified to an almost unbearable degree. The sheer number of unburied dead, both human and animal, combined with overflowing latrines and the general lack of sanitation, has turned the castle into a massive, festering wound. The air is thick with the buzzing of flies, which now seem to cover every surface, landing on your skin, on your food, a constant, irritating, and disease-spreading torment. You are perpetually nauseous, fighting the urge to vomit at every breath. The sounds of the siege are no longer just external. They have become ingrained in your very being. The distant thud of a trebuchet, the clang of the battering ram, the shouts of the enemy, the moans of the dying. These are the only lullabies you know. Even in moments of absolute silence, your mind replays them. A relentless auditory hallucination that denies you any peace. The inability to escape the noise, even in your own head, is a cruel form of torture. You observe the cunning ways the enemy attempts to exploit any weaknesses, whether physical or moral. They might send small groups disguised as peasants or refugees to approach the walls, hoping to be let in, or to gather intelligence. You see the guards, hardened by weeks of betrayal, turn them away, sometimes violently, knowing that mercy could mean the end for all. This constant vigilance, this inability to trust anyone or anything from the outside, further isolates you, making the world seem smaller, more hostile. The breakdown of discipline among your own ranks has reached a critical point. Soldiers abandon their posts, hoard supplies, and engage in petty theft and violence. The chain of command is barely holding. Each order met with weary sighs or outright defiance. You see fear and desperation in the eyes of your commanders, too, as they struggle to maintain control over a starving, dying garrison. The castle is not just under attack from without, it is decaying from within, its heart slowly giving out. It's a point of academic debate whether internal collapse or external force was more often the primary cause for the fall of a besieged fortress. You, however, are living the grim reality of both. Then, a new and horrifying sight emerges. The besiegers have begun to construct enormous, elevated platforms, taller than any previous structure, often protected by massive wooden shields. From these heights, they deploy large, weighted, swinging demolition balls or maces, not unlike wrecking balls, which they swing directly into the highest parts of your walls, aiming for the battlements and towers. You hear the deafening crash as these massive weights slam into stone, sending vibrations through the entire structure. The sheer force of impact, the splintering of stone, and the sight of sections of the wall suddenly collapsing under the weight of these monstrous devices fills you with a chilling dread. It's a truly awful, spectacular way to witness your defenses being methodically pulverized. You recall a curious historical detail, a lesser-known fact about desperate medieval tactics. Sometimes, if a besieged castle had a particularly stubborn or defiant commander, the attackers would resort to launching severed heads of his family or prominent citizens over the walls, sometimes even alive, if they had captured them. This extreme form of psychological warfare aimed to break the commander's will, forcing him to surrender to prevent further atrocities. While you haven't seen this specific horror yet, the general use of human remains as projectiles makes such a thought chillingly plausible. The very concept of time has become meaningless. Days blur into weeks, weeks into an endless cycle of suffering. You lose track of the sun's passage, of the seasons. Your world has shrunk to the immediate pain and the constant, nagging threat of death. You are merely existing, a shell of your former self, driven by a primal urge to take one more breath, to endure one more moment, one more. The physical toll is devastating. Your body is ravaged by disease, malnutrition, and exhaustion. Your skin is covered in sores and rashes. Your teeth ache, and your hair is falling out. Every joint screams in protest with every movement. You are a walking testament to the human body's incredible, yet ultimately finite, capacity for endurance. You sometimes glimpse the faces of children, their eyes wide with a fear that is beyond understanding. Their silent suffering is a constant torment, a reminder of the innocent lives caught in this horrific crucible. You wish you could offer them comfort, but you have none to give. Only the grim resolve to keep breathing for one more agonizing moment. The air is thick with the smell of despair, a palpable weight that presses down on you. It's the scent of forgotten dreams, of shattered hopes, of lives being slowly extinguished. This isn't just a siege, it's an apocalypse in miniature, playing out within the confines of these crumbling walls. You are now a whisper, a shadow clinging to the last vestiges of life within this crumbling stronghold. The siege has stretched beyond the limits of human endurance, transforming you into a witness of history's most agonizing cruelties. The stench, the hunger, the unceasing dread, they are no longer just external torments, but have merged with your very being, leaving you hollowed out, yet somehow still present. You've seen the calculated malice of man and the indiscriminate savagery of disease. But the grim saga isn't over. The besiegers still have one last, truly awful, layer of torment to strip away. You observe them building colossal earthen ramps, steadily rising from the plains outside your walls, inch by agonizing inch, until they are level with your battlements. These aren't just for scaling. They are massive, permanent structures, often wider than your walls themselves, allowing them to march entire companies of soldiers, even small siege engines, directly onto your defenses. It's a slow, terrifying, and utterly undeniable method of approach, turning your impregnable walls into mere obstacles on a gradual incline. The sight of this steady, unyielding ascent, a relentless human tide rising to meet you, drains the last drop of hope from your weary soul. It's a truly awful way to watch your superiority of position vanish, replaced by a horrifying level playing field. And then, as if the physical assault wasn't enough, they introduce a new, sickening form of psychological torture, the forced public executions of your own captured comrades, carried out just within sight and earshot of your walls. These aren't quick, merciful deaths. They are prolonged, agonizing spectacles designed to inflict maximum terror and despair upon the remaining defenders. You might witness hangings, flayings, or even dismemberments. Each scream, each gruesome act reverberating through the besieged castle, a chilling reminder of the fate that awaits you if you do not yield. The sight of a familiar face enduring such an awful end is a blow to your spirit that no physical wound could match. This tactic, though horrific, was a documented method of breaking morale in medieval warfare. The hunger has twisted into something else entirely. Your stomach no longer growls, it aches with a dull, constant pain, a hollowness that even the most desperate acts cannot fill. You see people resorting to eating leather from their boots, gnawing on discarded bones, even consuming dried grass or roots. The last vestiges of food are gone, and starvation has become the dominant reality, leading to a profound physical and mental decay. You witness individuals succumb to its slow embrace, their bodies simply shutting down, unable to sustain themselves. The water situation is beyond critical. It's a living death. Without any source of clean water, disease spreads like wildfire. The remaining population is ravaged by dysentery, cholera, and other contagions. Their bodies racked with fever and constant debilitating sickness. The dead are piled high, unburied, their decaying forms attracting swarms of flies and adding to the putrid stench that permeates every inch of the castle. You are constantly fighting off nausea, your own body weak and susceptible, knowing that any illness could be your end. The air inside the castle is a heavy, suffocating blanket of decay, disease, and despair. It clings to your skin, seeps into your lungs, and permeates your very being. You yearn for a breath of fresh air, a moment of clean scent. But it is a luxury long forgotten. The constant buzzing of flies, the groans of the sick, the distant sounds of the enemy, it all merges into a single, overwhelming sensory assault that offers no escape. You recall a lesser-known historical fact about the desperation of besiegers themselves sometimes. When facing a particularly stubborn defense, they would resort to starving out the surrounding countryside first, destroying crops, and poisoning wells for miles around, creating a scorched earth policy that would prevent any relief efforts and slowly strangle the besieged city. While you are within the walls, the thought of this wider, equally brutal tactic adds another layer to your understanding of medieval cruelty. The relentless psychological pressure has shattered the minds of many. You see men staring blankly into space, muttering incoherently, their eyes devoid of all reason. Others are consumed by religious fervor, convinced that their suffering is divine punishment or a test of faith. The line between sanity and madness has blurred, and you often question your own grip on reality, fearing that you too will succumb to the torment and lose yourself entirely. You witness acts of utter, heartbreaking self-sacrifice. A soldier, seeing a comrade fall, will rush into the thick of battle to retrieve their weapon, knowing it is almost certainly a death sentence. A parent will give their last morsel of food to a child, their own eyes reflecting a profound, selfless love even in the face of their own starvation. These moments, brief flickers of humanity amidst the overwhelming darkness, are both inspiring and deeply tragic. The very stone of the castle feels alive with suffering, resonating with the echoes of countless screams and dying breaths. It is no longer a symbol of strength, but a tomb, slowly but surely closing in around you. Every crack in the wall, every loosened stone, whispers of your impending doom, a chilling countdown to the inevitable. The enemy's taunts become more direct, more personal. They shout out names, sometimes even those of your family members if they've captured spies, using your own connections against you. They know your dwindling numbers, your desperate state, and they exploit it mercilessly, hoping to break the last vestiges of your will. This direct, targeted psychological warfare is deeply unsettling, a violation of your inner sanctuary. And then, a new horror, born of sheer tactical brilliance. The besiegers begin to deploy large, heavily armored wagons or carts, filled not with men, but with dead, decaying bodies, specifically those infected with highly contagious diseases. These vehicles are then pushed, often with the aid of long poles, directly into any breaches that have been made in your walls, or even into the main gates once they've been weakened. The intention is to literally block the breach with a mound of plague-ridden corpses, turning the entry points into a biological hazard zone, making it impossible for you to sally forth or for them to enter without risking mass infection. It's a truly awful, grotesque barrier, turning the battlefield into a graveyard before the final fight even begins. You are now at the precipice, a mere breath away from the abyss. The siege has stripped away everything: your strength, your hope, your very humanity. The putrid air, the gnawing hunger, the constant threat of a horrific end, these are the only companions left. You've witnessed the depths of man's cruelty, the insidious creep of disease, and the agonizing ingenuity of war. But there is one final, truly awful, and inevitable chapter to this story. You observe the final preparations from the enemy camp. Their earthen ramps are now complete, towering over your remaining defenses. A grim invitation to your doom. Their siege engines are positioned for one last, devastating barrage. The air crackles with an ominous silence, the calm before the storm. A chilling quietude that feels heavier than any bombardment. You know, with a gut-wrenching certainty that the final assault is imminent. This is the moment of truth, the climax of weeks, perhaps months, of unimaginable suffering. As if to add a final, horrifying flourish to their campaign of terror, the besiegers begin to play their trumpets and drums, not in a triumphant march, but in a slow, mournful, yet incredibly loud death dirge. It's a cacophony of sound designed to strip away any remaining courage, to herald your impending demise with a soundtrack of despair. The chilling notes resonate through your emaciated body, a grim overture to the final act. It's a truly awful, deeply unsettling way to be welcomed to your end. A psychological torment designed to crush your spirit before a single blow is struck. The last of your water has been consumed. Your throat is raw, your lips cracked and bleeding. The thirst is a searing fire within you, a torment that eclipses all others. You watch as your comrades, utterly spent, collapse from dehydration, their bodies unable to take another moment of deprivation. The very air feels dry, sucking the moisture from your skin, and every breath is a painful rasp. You find yourself hallucinating, seeing mirages of cool, clear water, only to be cruelly awakened to the parched reality. The disease, relentless and unforgiving, has claimed countless lives. The bodies of the fallen, piled high, create a macabre landscape within the castle. The stench of decomposition is overwhelming, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the inevitability of death. You are surrounded by the dying, their moans and cries a constant, heartbreaking chorus of agony. You know, with chilling certainty, that even if you survive the final assault, the rampant pestilence might claim you in the aftermath. This widespread historical fact that disease was a greater killer than combat in medieval sieges is now your living, dying reality. The psychological toll has pushed many over the brink. You see men openly weeping, others laughing hysterically, their minds completely shattered by the unrelenting pressure. Some stand rigid, eyes wide with terror, utterly catatonic, waiting for the end. You try to hold on to your own sanity, to focus on the smallest, most immediate tasks, but the edges of your reality are blurring, threatening to dissolve into the abyss of madness. You remember a particularly unsettling, yet less discussed, historical detail: the practice of breaking faith. This occurred when, after a prolonged siege and desperate resistance, the attackers, upon finally breaching the walls, would show absolutely no mercy. The terms of surrender, if any were offered, were rescinded, and a general slaughter ensued. This was a brutal warning to other potential defenders, an act of unmitigated terror designed to break the will of any future besieged. You know, deep in your bones, that this might be your fate, a complete and utter annihilation. The walls, your last refuge, are crumbling. Visible cracks spiderweb across the stone, and large sections have been reduced to rubble. The once formidable battlements are now precarious ledges, offering little protection. You feel the tremor of every impact, every explosion, a constant reminder that your sanctuary is disintegrating around you. The sound of stone grinding against stone, the creak of collapsing timbers, is the death knell of your fortress. The enemy's final assault begins with a deafening roar. Thousands of soldiers surge forward, a human wave cresting over the earthen ramps, pouring through the breaches, and swarming over the weakened gates. The air is filled with the clang of steel, the screams of men, and the terrifying shouts of the attackers. You are plunged into a maelstrom of desperate, hand-to-hand combat. A chaotic dance of death where survival depends on a quick blade and a desperate will to live. Your senses are overwhelmed the sight of blood, the acrid smell of sweat and fear, the deafening roar of battle. You fight with the last vestiges of your strength, your movements sluggish, your vision blurred by exhaustion and fear. You parry a blow, thrust your weapon, and fall back, pushed by the sheer weight of the surging enemy. There is no strategy now, no grand plan, only the primal instinct to survive one more second, to take one more breath. The battle is a blur of motion, a desperate struggle against overwhelming odds. You glimpse the faces of the enemy, not hardened warriors, but grim, determined men, driven by the same desperation you feel, albeit from the other side. They too have suffered, have endured privation, and now they seek their reward. The humanity of your opponents, even in this moment of ultimate conflict, is a fleeting, chilling realization. The screams of the dying are all around you, a horrifying symphony of agony. You see comrades fall, their eyes wide with disbelief, their lives extinguished in a single, brutal moment. You know that your own end might come at any second, a swift, brutal strike, or a slow, agonizing bleed out. The anticipation of death, the uncertainty of its arrival, is a torment unto itself. And then, as the final curtain draws, a thought flickers through your mind, a haunting question that scholars still ponder: how much of a siege's outcome was truly decided by overwhelming force, and how much by the sheer psychological and physical attrition, grinding down a garrison until they simply could not take another moment. You, having lived through it, know the answer is both, intricately intertwined. But the slow, agonizing decay of the human spirit was perhaps the most potent weapon of all. Now, as the echoes of that terrifying final assault begin to fade, let's allow the harsh images to gently recede, drifting away like mist over ancient battlefields. You've journeyed through the grimmest corners of history tonight, witnessing endurance and despair beyond imagining. Feel your body softening, releasing the tension you've held, allowing the phantom sensations of hunger and thirst to dissolve into the quiet comfort of your surroundings. The clang of steel, the distant cries, the smell of smoke and fear, let them all become whispers on the wind, harmless echoes in the vast expanse of time. The weight of history, so heavy just moments ago, now settles into a gentle, distant hum. Your own breath deepens, slowing to a peaceful rhythm. You are safe. Here, now, far from the crumbling walls and the desperate struggle. Let the warmth of your blankets embrace you. Let the soft hum of the fan lull you. The past is a story told, and now it's time for quiet.